Tonight's presentation, Greg has agreed to show us some work he has done recently on his control tip text technique that he demoed in a previous presentation. And I just coincidentally this month had an occasion to see how important that could be. I'll explain it maybe at the end of the meeting. We'll have time and I'll show you my issue. But I was preparing a little Access app for a nonprofit, and I wanted to put tool tips, control tips into the interface since I wouldn't have a chance to train them. And I ran into an issue. So I'll probably try to circle back to that later when we get to that end. But in keeping with tradition over the last few months, I'm going to kind of review the roadmap. Supposedly, the Monaco framework recently rolled out speedy loading into the current channel. And so far, the only person, well, actually, there's now 2 or 3 people who have now reported that they actually have it. I don't yet. I'm on current channel and I don't have it, but it supposedly loads now the SQL view almost instantaneously as opposed to a 3 or 4 or 5-second delay. So if you're on current channel, you should see that. And I would appreciate hearing from other people if that is actually the case. Just a reminder that at Access Forever, we're always looking for showcase material. It's a one-page just highlight of an application that you've built in Access that you think is worthy of sharing with your peers. We've got, I think we're up to 4 or 5. One will be released at the end of this month. They're all kind of interesting, all different, but they're all built around Access. And this is the link. And I'll put this link into the chat if you'd like to go there and submit an idea for an app that you have that you'd like to showcase. The Discord server, we're up to 160 some people today. Last time I looked, it's sort of not doing a lot of activity, but it's a place where you can go to talk to people about Access in a more of an informal place. Access user groups are starting to go back to work. Some of us took September, or not September, it's now September. Some of us took August off and we're coming back. I just quickly run down. Natalia is coming up on the 9th. Lunchtime is the 30th. Crystal and Adrian are going to be presenting at that one. So I'm looking forward to that. Would you like to give us a quick preview of your custom and built-in functions, what that's all about?
Okay. Well, expressions are used just about everywhere in Access. So there'll be a demo database with just a type of expression in tables, queries, forms, and the differences between using an expression in like a table, like a field, calculated field does not have all the VBA functionality that VBA has, and there's things that you can't do in VBA that you can do in object expressions, like use the in operator. And so the differences between those, and Adrian will explain some subtleties about the differences as well. And hopefully there'll also be a list of all of the functions and what types or where they can be used.
Excellent. Thank you. You can see España, they don't have a meeting topic, but they're supposedly meeting on the 18th. Kent, what is your meeting going to be about? Do you have a topic?
So I was doing other stuff. I was going to ask Adrian if he did that thing on the error call stack to begin the meeting for just 10 minutes. And then we're going to the usual wide discussions and everybody's involvement and talking about what's important.
Okay, great. I look forward to that. I will not miss the next one.
I'll ask you later, Adrian.
I'm going to say you've ever heard me talk for less than 10 minutes?
Yes.
Moving right along.
But more than once.
I'll try, Kent, but you know it's going to be a struggle for me to keep it to under 10 minutes.
Yeah. So October 1st, Europe is going to have another custom dialogues and mini notifications on the same general topic. Juan is renewing Academy for SQL Server on the 9th. His Academy presentations tend to be fundamentally the same from year to year, but he's always talking to new users, so it's always fresh for the people who do show up. If you want to volunteer for this chapter, let me know in an email of something that you're interested in talking about. And I'm going to put in another plug for the San Francisco Bay Area. That one is interesting. I think they're going to be on the 12th this month, but that's another informal hour and a half, 2 hours of just talking about access and related subjects with a group of people who've been together for years and years and years, but they've welcomed in several newcomers to participate. So with that, I will go back and turn the time over to Greg to talk about your updated tool text.
Today's talk is a follow-up on a blockbuster movie that I made last year about a custom control tip text. So by popular demand, I've been asked to come back and do another talk. The reality is, though, that I had to beg and beg George to let me do this presentation, and he couldn't find anyone else, so you're kind of stuck with me for the next few minutes. So you know the drill. Look for the emergency exits, turn off your mobile phones, get some popcorn and Coke, and we'll start the ride together. So protocol, I'm happy if you ask any easy questions throughout the presentation. Hard questions are banned. So to start the topic off, we'll have a little bit of a recap of the solution that I presented last year, and then why you would need to update that solution. So first we'll go back to what is a tooltip. So on a form, if you have a control and you set it up in design, when you mouse over that control, a label can pop up to show the purpose of that icon or that control. And this is native to Microsoft Access, and the way that you initiate that is simply to populate your control tip text property in design for the relevant control, and then that will become available. So the terminology that I'll use, because I tend to sort of waffle between different terms for the same thing. So it's control tip text, tooltip, pop-up label. My preferred term is tooltip. And other times I'll refer to images and icons interchangeably. And I mention that simply because principally the solution I've come up with I use on images, but it can be used for other controls as well. So the question is why I care about tooltips. And that's simply because I prefer image-based interfaces rather than text-based. So this is an example of an image-based interface. If you've watched any of other previous presentations, you'll know that's kind of where I'm at. So the images or the icons on the user form are fine and dandy, but for a new user, what do they mean? They have no context. So we need some way to have the beauty of the image-based interface, but still have the user know the intention of those controls or images. So again, the icon's purpose may not be apparent. So we've got some pretty icons there. What are they mean? And the tooltip or the pop-up label explains the purpose, as you can see here with the icon on the left. So we already have a built-in tooltip or control tip text that's native to Microsoft Access. So why do we need a custom tooltip? So the built-in facility for the tooltip, as I showed, was the control tip text property. You just have to populate it with text. And the reason I want a custom tooltip is because the native solution is too slow, and I want a more responsive solution. So let's do a quick demo. Let me just open the demo form up. Okay, so here we have last year's solution in this simple page of the navigation control. And you'll see at left I have an icon there, and you'll see the reason why I've chosen that particular image. So if I move my mouse, can everyone see the mouse moving?
Yes.
Okay, great. So you'll see as I move above it, nothing happens. So to actually see that pop-up label, I have to pause. It's not intuitive, it's not obvious. So what we'd like is for our applications to be as intuitive possible to a user. We don't expect them to be necessarily familiar with Access. So you can see there, it can be sort of sporadic in whether you see it or not. So on the other hand, because of that lack of responsiveness and the fact that I like image-based interfaces, I come up with my own solution, which is instant. Okay, so as soon as you mouse over it, it'll appear immediately. So let me go back to the presentation. So we'll have a quick discussion about how it works. And so we're in design view now for the form, and these are the target images here. You can apply the solution to other controls, as we'll discuss a little bit later, but principally I use it for images. And what it is that each of these images needs to have its mouse move event populated with code that will show the tooltip. Now up here, with the blue and white here control, it's actually a command button, not a label. I chose a command button because you get nice rounded corners. It will, when we run the code to show the tooltip, it will position itself by default to the top left, sorry, the top right of the target control. It will take the text, it will populate with the relevant text, which I'll show you in a minute, and resize to accommodate that text. So each of these controls needs code in it to show the tooltip. The actual text that's going to appear in that tooltip comes from the tag property. Now, just a little bit earlier, I showed you the native solution requires you to populate the control tip text. You notice that's blank, and that's because I don't want the two solutions showing up. If my tooltip comes up, I don't also want the native Microsoft one to show as well, because it just becomes clutter. So I use the tag property, and note that the target text is wrapped in delimiters, and that's so that we can use the tag property for other purposes if you wanted. So code needs to find text that happens to be between these delimiters, and that will populate the text of the command button. And so the code to show the tooltip is in the control itself. But we also need code to hide the tooltip when we move our mouse off the target control or image. We need to hide that tooltip. So we have this backdrop. So you notice we go back to design. In design, the backdrop can sit anywhere, and that's actually a rectangle. Its property is set to send to back because it needs to be behind the controls. And what it'll do when we show the tooltip, it'll position itself around the back of the target icon. It'll be a little bit larger than the icon. And the reason for that is when we move our mouse off the target control, it's then forced to mouse over that rectangle, and it's that rectangle's mouse move event that will call the code to hide the tooltip. Similarly, the tooltip itself, or the command button, has the same code to hide itself. And that's because as we move, if our mouse is here, it means that we're off that target control. We want it to disappear. By the way, the tooltip has to be set to bring to front, has to be on top of everything else. That's a recap of how the basic solution works, whether it's in the one I showed you last year or the new solution. That's the principle. Now, for this to work, each control needs its mouse move event populated with the code to call the tooltip. And if that control has a function, which it probably would, like opening up, say, a form, then we also need to put code in there to hide it. So if we click the icon, it's going to open up a form. What we want to happen first is for that tooltip to disappear before we open the form. So you can imagine retrofitting the solution is that you've got to go and then put this code into all of those controls. Okay, so just keep that in mind. It's one of the reasons why we've got this sort of updated version of the tooltip. So I thought my solution was pretty cool and dandy. I was pretty pleased with myself, but then there are some other issues with the solution, which I'm trying to address. So let's look at some of those problems. So which icon? Okay, so let's move to the next slide. So my mouse is above this icon here, and as I explained, by default, the tooltip will position itself to the top right corner of that control. Now, I know that as the developer, but for someone else looking at it, it's also positioning itself above an adjacent control. So which is the actual target control that the tooltip's referring to? That's not clear. Now, this was an issue pointed out in my presentation last year by George and Bill Sullivan. So shout out to them because they also proposed a solution that we're going to have a look at. So as developers, we know the intention of what we're doing, but it's hard to actually come back to your solution with fresh eyes as if you don't know what's happening. So it's really good to get feedback from others. So a shout out to George and Bill for pointing that out. Now, there's no timed disappearing act, okay? So if the mouse stays above that control, that tooltip will stay there. What I'd like is it would appear for a few seconds and disappear. The other thing is that the tooltip colors are fixed. So if you're trying to retrofit this to your legacy solution, I've got blue and white command button there, but that may not match the colors of your legacy forms. It's not a big deal, but what if there's an easier way to handle that? Sorry. And the mouse move event doesn't always fire to hide the tooltip. So let me give you a demonstration. So the idea is, let's go to the X-ray version. So we've got an X-ray version. The difference is that this the backdrop control is shown in orange. In production, it's camouflaged so you don't see it. But this is the X-ray version. So the idea is that the backdrop rectangle, which positions itself behind the control, has the function of hiding the tooltip via its mouse move event. So as we move off the control, we're obliged to pass over the backdrop rectangle. Its code will hide the solution. Now, the issue is if you move the mouse fast enough, that backdrop or the backdrop mouse move event is bypassed. Doesn't actually get called. So you can get left. So my mouse is not over there, but the tooltips remains there. So it's not perfect in that respect. Some other issues which I can't necessarily demonstrate is flickering. I can't always duplicate it, but I did notice when I was developing that was an issue sometimes, depending which application you have this in. So what I'm talking about here is if you have your mouse over the control and so basically we've run the mouse, so the mouse move event of the control to show the tooltip. Okay, it's done its job. Okay, however, there is a phenomenon within Access sometimes that certain code can actually trigger that mouse move event, even though the mouse is not moving. Now, the role of the mouse move event of that icon is to show the tooltip. So it can be constantly running, and that can cause flickering. Like it's constantly calling the code to show that show the tooltip, and I found in some circumstances that it may cause some flickering, but I just can't duplicate it. But that could be an issue. Another issue is whether we want the code. Right now, the code to show the tooltip is being run because I'm moving the mouse. Okay. So what I'm referring to when the mouse is not moving, but the mouse move event is being called I'm calling that a phantom mouse move event. The other issue is that the solution that I showed last year is not classed. And I think classing is a better way to do it, which we'll get into. The other solution is retrofitting. So as I explained, if you want to take my solution that I demonstrated last year, you've got to go and encode all of the controls appropriately and maybe change the design of the actual command button itself. So let's get on now to the updated tooltip, which is classed and subclassed. And this is where I give a bit of a shout out to Kent for introducing me to subclassing, and also to Eric Blomqvist, because he volunteered to help me on a solution, which I wasn't asking for, but was very kindly fed back on some of my code and made it better and sort of taught me a few things about classing. So I appreciate that. So let's look at the required modules that you'll need in a legacy solution to implement the custom tooltip. So these are the modules that you would need. The first one is the parent class. So when you open a form, it's going to bind to the parent class. And then you've got subclasses. You've also got what I call a multi-timer. What that is trying to get back to VB6, where you could have as many timers on a form, and each timer had a dedicated purpose. Whereas in Microsoft Access, each form only has one form timer event. So the idea of this multi-timer class is to be able to have a dedicated timer for a specific purpose. So you can have as many timers going as you like. The purpose of that multi-timer, the way it fits in, it's actually a separate solution, but it's used by the custom tooltip for the disappearing act that I talked about, i.e. I would like the tooltip to disappear after a few seconds. And this module is a helper which is going to help us retrofit the solution to a legacy form. So just going into a little bit into the solution. So when the form opens, it'll bind to the parent class. Yeah, have our subclasses. So what the parent class will do is it'll, when it's initiated, it'll run this function here, tooltip controls. It will interrogate the form to find all of the eligible controls for the tooltip. What that means is it'll interrogate images, labels, command buttons, and text boxes. So they're all the controls that the solution currently will allow the tooltip to work for. And for those controls to be eligible, they have to have their the tag property populated. So remember, for this to work, we need the tag property with this pseudo control tip text here wrapped in the appropriate delimiters. So it'll look for the controls that has those, okay? And then if those controls exist, if those conditions exist for the control, then each of those controls will have a subclass and will be bound to a subclass, this B here. So for each eligible control, there'll be a subclass activated. So let's go to a quick demo. By the way, does anyone want to ask any questions at this point?
We have one in the chat.
Great.
I'll read it out for you. Can you see it, or should I read it out for you?
Just read it out for me, please. I'm a bit
So
challenged.
All right. Adrian asks, do you use a rectangle for every tooltip object, or you simply have one big rectangle behind all of the items that use the tooltips?
Yeah, good question. So, Adrian, it's actually just one rectangle. And when you say it's one big rectangle, it's just one rectangle. In fact, in design, it doesn't matter what size it is, because when the code runs to show the tooltip, it will resize itself to the relevant control. So it's just one that's shared for the whole form section.
You seem to contradict yourself there, or let me put it
Okay.
another way.
Yep.
I'm saying, do you have one per tooltip object, or do you have one across the whole form that all tooltip objects use?
Okay, so what it is, on the form section, there'll be one rectangle.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and then whenever you mouse over one of the eligible controls or images, and it calls the code to show the tooltip, it's calling that rectangle. So there's only one. There's only one rectangle. They're all sharing it because only one of those controls will have the mouse over it at any time. I hope I'm answering
the
the
one
question. But
rectangle is sort of essentially big enough to go behind all of the objects that you're using in tooltip.
no, it's not. It's not a matter of size. It's a matter of it will resize itself.
Oh, you move
behind.
it. You don't just resize it. You move it every time.
Yeah. So let me actually, it's a really good question, because if you don't kind of understand that, then it's kind of not going to make a lot of sense. So so this is a good clarification. What I'll do, let me go into design. Okay. So and we'll go into the X-ray version here. So let me move that over. Here's the backdrop. Okay. So this box tooltip backdrop. Okay. It doesn't matter what size it is in design, whether it's tiny or whatever, because what's going to happen when you run, so mouse move event, that control is going to call the code to position this tooltip by default to the top right corner, and it's going to also get this backdrop. So let's just make it small to start off with. Okay, so the code will actually move that tooltip to position itself around the back of that control, but slightly wider. So that it has to be slightly wider so that when we move off the target image, the mouse is obliged to move over that backdrop and call its mouse move event, which will then hide the tooltip. So in design time, there is only one rectangle.
I get all that, Greg. What I don't understand is why you make it so that it's only just bigger than when it's invisible.
Yep.
You could make it just as the size of whatever size the form is, and anytime it gets triggered, there's no danger of missing the thing through speed of mouse. And it covers every single item on there that needs it. You wouldn't have to go around moving it and resizing it every time. You just have one big thing, and it does the job for all of them. That's what I would imagine would be the simplest.
Yep, and that's totally valid. What you're saying, absolutely totally valid. I've got another way of doing it, which we'll get onto a little bit. But yeah, I hear you, and I agree with you. So, but I've got another way to do it. So this actually, you'll see a little bit later. This will actually take on a different function, and there's another way to hide the controls.
Okay. So there's another question.
Yep.
Ron McCary asked, have you considered using the tooltip, then moving them to tag in the... Ron, can you explain that? Ron,
well, the init function, you're talking about having to modify all your forms. A lot of forms would have a tooltip already in it. So you change the init function to, if it has a tooltip, copy it to tag and delete a tooltip. Of course, when you close the form, it's not safe. Every time you open the form, it's going to move that tooltip. That way you don't have to touch every control that you want the tooltip on.
Okay, I'm not kind of understanding it. Can you actually can you
Well,
hold that and let's get back to it at the end of the presentation.
okay.
I may have answered it by the time we get to the end. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. We have one more question.
Yep.
Is this suitable for anchored controls? That's from Dominic.
I don't think it would matter because it's like at runtime, it's going to position the backdrop and the tooltip will position themselves to wherever that control is. So I don't think it would matter. Just to let you know that my updated solution works with 4 types of controls, being command button, label, an image, and a text box. So I've at the moment I've just made it work with those particular controls. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, we got a thumbs up from Dominic. So I'll
Yeah.
mute myself.
Sure. Okay. So I'll just bring that up again, and then we'll get back to the presentation. So yeah, all good questions. So let's go through some of the challenges that we had when developing the solution. So one was the phantom mouse move events. So what I was talking about there is when the mouse is not moving, but the mouse move event of the target control is being called. And it's a bit of a phenomenon. I sort of did a bit of research on it. It is possible. And then secondary mouse move events. So what I'm talking about here is that whenever we mouse over the control, I think what I probably need to do, I'm not sure of it. Yeah, I think what I need to do first is demonstrate the new solution. Okay, so here we have the new solution, and you'll see the difference. Okay, the first thing you'll notice is that we had the question of which control is being targeted, and the backdrop now has a border around it, and that highlights the actual control that's being targeted by the tooltip. Okay, so that was feedback from George and Bill Sullivan in the last presentation. The other aspect is that the colours of the tooltip sort of will match to your form. So the back colour of the command button of the tooltip will match the back colour of the form section, and then it will find a contrasting font and border colour. So to demonstrate that, I'll go to another subform with an ugly sort of background, and you'll notice that the tooltip is still visible, and it's chosen the back colour of the form section that it's on, and then contrasting font and border colour. Now, I mean, it's an awful choice of a back colour, but that's just to demonstrate a point. The other point, and I think this goes to Ron's, who was asking that question, but about whether, actually, but go back to Adrian's question about disappearing, why you couldn't use the backdrop. Just make it huge. Well, the backdrop's function now is to highlight the relevant control that it's behind, okay, that's being highlighted. So obviously that wouldn't work if I made it, if I resized it to be the size of the form. But we've got a perfectly reliable disappearing act when we move off. Doesn't matter how fast I move it, it's going to disappear, and we'll get into how that happens. So I hope I'm answering your question, Adrian, as we go. Another aspect is that by default, it dock itself to the tooltip will dock itself to the top right corner of the target control. However, if it hits an edge of a form or a navigation subform, so this border here is the delineation of a navigation control. And if this tooltip were to dock itself to the top right, it would actually be obscured. You'd only see half of it. So it'll detect whether it's going to hit a border and then flip the other way and then justify itself to the top left corner of the control. But it's still obvious which control is being targeted because of the border of the backdrop. The other sort of improvement was if I hold my mouse there for a few seconds, it will disappear. Okay, that's the demonstration of the updated solution. And the challenge is, so let's come back to the issue of the mouse move events. So when we mouse over a control, we've already shown the tooltip. We don't need that code running again, okay? So even if I keep moving here, we really don't want that code running again to show the tooltip. It's already visible. So we don't need the event to keep firing while the tooltip is visible. So the way we handle that is that in the controls mouse move event, now this is in the subclass. So the mouse move event of that control will call a function called show tooltip. The mouse move event has coordinates built into it, X and Y, and these are passed through to the show tooltip function, which are in turn passed to a function called new mouse move. So we only want to show the tooltip if we have a new mouse move. So the coordinates of the mouse are passed through to this event as new, and then they're recorded as old or previous by static variables. And then we compare the old and the new. And if the old and new variables are the same, it means that we haven't really got a genuine new mouse move. And so we set mouse move to false. And then if mouse move is false, then we just exit. We don't actually run the code to show the tooltip again. The other issue is that, so that will handle phantom mouse moves. So the mouse move event's being called, but the mouse hasn't actually moved. But we also have phantom mouse move events. So what will happen whenever you show the tooltip, the target control will be passed to the parent and recorded there. Its name will be recorded. And then if the name of the control that's being called is the same as the previous one, then you don't have a new mouse move event effectively. So even if the mouse is moving above the control, but it's the same control that was called last time, then we just exit. We don't run the code to show the tooltip. So if the target control is the same as the current target control in the parent, then we just skip the code to show the tooltip. So that's in the parent class, and that's the variable that records the calling control. The other one, and we're sort of getting to Adrian's question about how to hide the tooltip. Hiding the tooltip's not reliable, and as I showed you, if you move really fast, the tooltip can hang there. Which is what we demonstrated before. So Adrian's idea, which is a pretty good one, is to make that backdrop big enough so that it's got a large catchment area, and then you won't have that problem. My issue is that I wanted to now use that backdrop to highlight the target control, so I don't have that option. And in the previous meeting, we talked about, well, why not use the form section mouse move event? And my issue with that, which I rejected last year, was that I don't want code running every time I move around here. So it will constantly be calling the code to hide the tooltip, which I don't want. I think it's very bad coding. It's a very bad idea. However, brace yourself. because that's the very stupid thing I'm going to do. So this might be a bit disturbing to some viewers. So we're actually going to use the form section mouse move event, despite what I just said, but we're going to do it in a special way. Okay, so try not to panic, because we're going to use classing and subclassing to do this. So these are the modules that we need for the solution. We have the parent, which is bound to the form. Now, if we were to put the form section mouse move event at the form level or the parent level, that means it's always active. Every time we move above that form section area, the code's going to get called, which is what we don't want. So what we do is we have the forms section mouse move into this subclass here. So the parent calls the form section subclass. However, it's dormant by default. So initially nothing's happening until such time as the code to show the tooltip runs, and then this form section is initiated or substantiated. And then, so it's active while tooltip is visible. When we mouse above the form section to hide the tooltip, it's actually going to kill itself. So it's going to call the parent class and say, turn me off. So it's basically going to commit suicide. But let me go into that a little bit more. So here we have, over here at the left, we have the form section subclass. Its mouse move event is going to call the code to hide the tooltip, which is point A there. It'll then run the code to kill the mouse move subclass. So the green here, that's referring to the parent. It'll call this code in the parent, which will turn the form section mouse move off, or eventually effectively kill that class. So while the mouse move is hidden, the form section subclass is dormant. So Adrian, that's the way that I now handle. I've got the biggest catchment area possible via the form section. That's the way we handle it now. Is that okay?
Yeah. When you if I may, a relevant question to what you've just said, when you say you disable it, do you take away the text that says event procedure in the event property?
No. So what it actually says is it, so let me, no, I haven't got that.
Because you can do that very quickly and easily to disable an event procedure is to take that away from the property, and bam, it's no longer triggered.
No, I just kill the subclass. So basically, we set the subclass to nothing, and then it's gone. Doesn't exist. That's the way it's done. The parent will actually, this code in the parent just sets the this subclass here to nothing, and then when we show the tooltip, it substantiates it again.
Okay, I'm not sure I follow that clearly, but obviously, if you haven't got an event procedure running, it's not going to call. It's not going to try and do anything.
Okay, let me go into.
I don't want to take you off track or anything. I just
no, it's fine. It's actually getting your head around this is this sort of, that's the whole point of why we're here. So let's go into here. So this is the code in the form section subclass. It's going to call the code in the parent to hide the tooltip, and then it's going to say kill me effectively. So it's running this. This is the parent. So it's going to call the code in the parent to turn the form section off. So let's go to that. Let's go to definition. Okay, and up here it just sets the subclass to nothing. Okay, so effectively that form section subclass doesn't exist anymore. So its mouse move event doesn't exist.
So what happens when the mouse move event, presumably the event is still there? It's still,
Well, no, the form
there's
section's
an event
dead.
handler.
No,
Sorry?
the form section subclass is dead. But when we run the code to show the tooltip, we substantiate it again. So we bring it back to life.
Yeah, but having a class, an object, if you like, available isn't going to stop the fact that you've got an event on the section that's being triggered. I mean, it may be that when it's triggered, it doesn't do anything, but surely it's triggering.
Or does the termination event in that subclass remove the event procedure?
Yeah. So here's the form section subclass, and we're running. And so So here's the mouse move. We've moved our mouse over the form section. It's called the code in the parent to hide the tooltip. And then it's calling the parent to say, kill me. So if we go to this code in the parent, go to definition here, what it's saying is this is the form section subclass, and we're setting it to nothing. It doesn't exist anymore. So its code cannot run.
Subclass.
Yep. So that's it there. So it disappears. Basically,
you can't make a form section disappear just by changing.
No, the form section disappears, but its class version does. So if I were to put that into, if we actually went to the form itself, and we coded the disappearing act in the actual form section's mouse move event, the actual form itself, it can't disappear. It's always there as long as the form's open, the form section's active. It's there.
Well,
but this is only active provided the class is substantiated. So if we kill it, it's mouse move event. We don't have a form section mouse move event in the parent class or in the actual form itself, the form section itself. It's in this subclass.
I get that. I mean, you keep talking about classes.
Yes.
I'm looking at a fundamental point of access, which you've got a form with sections and events set.
Yes.
And if that event is set, it's going to try and do something. It may not get very far because you've killed the subclass. But if you take away the text that says event procedure, it's not even going to do that. That's the point I'm trying to make. I'm not sure that you've quite dealt with that directly.
Okay. No, I'm kind of not getting it, because what I'm trying to say is if the form section, the only place that the form section mouse move event resides is in that subclass, and if that subclass is killed, it can't run. But let's go back to, say, a form itself, and we'll pull up
section.
Yep. So that's not going to be there. Okay.
Hang on.
That doesn't exist.
So you don't actually have in the design of your form in the section, you don't have a mouse move event.
Correct.
You don't handle that in your form code. You only handle it in the object code. You make the form part of you ally the I'm not using the right terminology here, the form with the subclass, and when that subclass no longer exists, the events that it handles are no longer
existent.
There, existing indeed.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, because if I were to put it into the form, as you say, it's always there. I mean, you can't, as long as the form is open itself, or even the parent class that the form is bound to, if you put it there as well, it's always going to be there. Okay, so you need another way to get around it. Best way is to actually put that mouse move event of the form section into a subclass, and then only activate it when it's required, and then make it disappear when it's not required. I mean, you're welcome to ask questions. That's the point of this. And, you know, we are getting into classes and subclasses, which I know you understand, but you know, Crystal made a good point, is that it can be hard to teach. And so for somebody watching this, I know you get what I've just explained, but your questions can be helpful to somebody else who's watching this. So don't be afraid to challenge what I'm saying or raise a question. Somebody else might find it useful.
It's not so much that, Greg, as my realization that if I keep on that track, I'm going too far away, and it's not going to be very helpful, because it's more about what's in my head.
Yep. Okay, sure. But we can have an offline chat too, you know, anytime. I'm happy to do that, because,
Sure,
you know,
yeah.
I appreciate everyone's feedback, because I learn from it. So let's, maybe we'll go back to the PowerPoint if I can. Now, what have I done? Oh, here we go, I think. Oh, maybe okay, let's go Shift F5. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so yeah, so basically, so just to recap, what's actually happening, we do not put the mouse move event of the form section into the form itself or the parent, because it would always be there, and you'd always have to find some way around from running. The way to stop it running is to have it not exist at all, and the way we do that is in a subclass, which is only active when the tooltip is actually shown. So basically, the subclass which contains the form section mouse move event commits suicide and ceases to exist. So the form section subclass is dormant while the tooltip is hidden. So the other challenges were the tooltip label colors may not match your form. Not a big deal, I mean, but you know, what if there was an easier way? And then using the tag, so we've got a pseudo control tip text. So remember that we don't use the control tip text property. I put in the tag. So you would have to move that control tip text into your tag property and wrap it in the appropriate delimiters for every control. And then you require code lines, and you require the components with a specific arrangement. So this is all the challenge that you have to retrofit it to a legacy application. So you know, these are all the elements you need. There's a focus catcher text box, which I won't go into, but that's one element of it. Not really sure it's necessary anymore. You've got your command button tooltip you need on your form. You need your backdrop. This needs to be bring to front. Your backdrop needs to be sent to back. It needs to be behind everything. You need code within your control. You need your control text property, if you have it, moved into the tag and then wrapped in these delimiters. And you've got to do that for every target control. Also in your form itself, you need to refer to the classes. So in this case, we're using the parent class, and we're also using the multi-timer. So we need to declare those and then call them on the form open event. So for every form that's going to use the solution, you need to put that code into your form event, and then also you need to put this code in to hide the tooltip. So it's going to call the code to hide the tooltip. The other thing is that I've got a custom version of the native do command open form. So the class will run that for the target control. And the reason I do that, it does the two steps. So what it's going to do is first hide the tooltip and then open the target form. Okay, so it's going from this situation, hide tooltips and do command open form. That'll all be handled by my custom open form that I have in the solution. So you have to recode that for all of your controls that have a click event. So the way I've solved that is to write code that will actually retrofit your legacy form. So we have this, this module here, just a normal code module, and we have this code here. So in the immediate pane, you would run that code and with the name of the form as the argument. So if you want, we can do a little demonstration of that. So let me just open up, let's just close all this out, and we'll look at some demo forms here. So you'll see I'm using the native control tip text solution here, and we want to retrofit that to the updated custom tooltip. So let's just look inside this. So we'll go to the design view. If we look in here, its control tip text property is populated. Okay, so we're using the native solution. If you look on the form, we don't have any backdrop, we don't have any tooltip. Okay, so what we're going to do is get the name of that form. The way I do it is just hit F2, Control C, escape. Now I've got it in my clipboard, and we'll go back to the code here, and we'll go to View and Immediate Window. Where's that gone? Okay. Already got it populated there, so sorry about this. Okay. So if we run that code, that should retrofit that form with my solution. So let's just hit that. Okay, the retrofit of your form is complete. So let's now have a look at that. So what it's done is it's added the tooltip command button, ugly colors, which doesn't matter because remember it's going to match the design of your form in terms of the back color. We've got the backdrop rectangle, and go into the actual code itself. So let me get rid of the immediate window. We're declaring our variables for the classes, the multi-timer. We've got this sub that's been written into the form code that we need, and we've got our form open event, which is actually substantiating those classes. And if you look at each of the controls now, its do command open event has been replaced by our custom open form. We don't need any mouse move events for the images that are on the form because that's handled by the subclass. Proof is in the pudding, so let's open this form view, and then you'll see we have our custom solution there. So it makes it pretty quick to retrofit. I hope that helps you, George. Do you want to talk through, this might be a good time to talk through your situation, George, because it kind of makes, sometimes we develop these solutions and, you know, it's a limited use case, but you might want to talk about your desire for a custom tooltip.
Well, it's not entirely parallel because it involves text boxes and list boxes and command boxes rather than icons. But
okay. Yep.
So it's not the issue is that on certain monitors, I was getting flickering instead of the tooltips popping up.
Okay.
And it occurred to me that this would be a better approach, but it has to apply not to an icon, but to a combo box or a list box or a text box. So
okay, that's good. Let's go to that because I'll show you what it does apply to. So if we go to our parent class here, and let's try and find the tooltip controls in it. So this was the slide I showed earlier. When the parent class is substantiated, it's going to interrogate form for the relevant control. Now I've limited to image, label, command button, and text box. So you could play with actually adding more types to that to see what would happen. Because in your native solution, the control tip text is available for many controls. when I was developing this, I just put it for those were the ones I was interested in. But you might be able to just expand that and see how that goes.
It would be worth looking at. I don't want to interrupt your presentation to do it, but it has to do with the fact that I have a high res monitor.
Yep.
And control tips on that monitor simply flicker. They never actually display.
Gotcha.
And I only know one other instance. Tom Van Stiffout actually is the one who informed me that it was probably related to the monitor, and it only occurs on that resolution. But like I say, it's a very niche, it's a very edge case that it's not.
Right. Okay. But this might work because we're not using that pop-up label. It's just a control that happens to be visible, right? Which is a command button. So it might help you out.
It might work. Yeah, I will give it a try.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
we have some other questions in the chat. If you're at a point where you'd like to take that, or do you want?
Yeah. No, we're good. We're good.
All right, let's see if I can go back far enough. So actually, the first one is Chris. In the simple version, only one icon will have a tooltip, correct? Meaning only one can be displayed at a time?
That is correct, because the whole point of the tooltip is to show the purpose of the control that you're highlighting by moving the mouse over it. So the mouse is only ever going to be in one place. It's only ever going to be over one control at a time. So yeah, so it's only going to highlight the control that the mouse is over. Does that answer that question?
Well, Greg, so I guess I was curious because you were talking about having multiple timers going on to further versions. I was wondering why you would need multiple versions if you weren't going to try to keep multiple tooltips up for like a certain duration of time.
Okay, so that multi-timer was not developed specifically for this solution. Okay, it's
Gotcha.
what I wanted the multi-timer for was to be able to have VB6 timer control. So back in the old days, the 90s, when I had VB6, you could actually drop a timer control onto a form, and each one you dropped would be purpose specific. Whereas in Access, we only have one form timer event. So if you want multiple things happening, you've got to share it somehow, which I don't like. But I just happen to be using this multi-timer. So what happens is that when we show the tooltip, it calls the timer to say after a few seconds, hide the tooltip, and then the multi-timer then kills itself. So it's not there anymore.
Okay, that explains that. Thank you.
Yep, sure.
Okay, great. Ben has a question and a long follow-up, so I'm going to let Ben handle that himself. Ben?
Hi, Ben.
Unmute yourself.
Yep, hello. So I was curious if you had considered making this data-driven by having a table in your database that lists the form name, the control name, and the control tip text. And then you could just call the class in any form you want, hit the form open, form load. It would read that table, and then it would instantiate that on all the controls that are in the table.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it. Yeah, that's one way of doing it. The reason I've done it this way is because a lot of people already have a form that's using the native control tip text, and this will just convert it. So it'll pick it out of that control tip text property and move it into the tag and then apply my solution. So what I'm trying to do is have it basically retrofit legacy forms. But if you're building from the ground up, yeah, you could do that. Why not? Okay. Or you could have that, rather than moving into a tag property, you could have it into that table, like you said, and then your tag property is free for other purposes. So that's totally valid, what you're saying.
Okay, I wrote my question before I had seen the complete demonstration. My next question was, same as Chris's upcoming question, are you using with events?
With events? No, I don't think so. No.
And if you're not familiar with that, it's
Yes. So you mean where you actually? No, sorry. So it would be with events. It would be, yeah. You're declaring the controls with events. Yep. So the yep. Sorry, you are you're using with events. Yes.
so inside of your class, you're finding the controls that have been instantiated, and you're
Yes.
creating it with events.
Yes, because you
Event?
need those. You need the mouse move events to be active.
I didn't see that in your code. I was just curious if that's how you're doing it.
You did have me worried there, Greg, for a
Yeah.
minute when you said you weren't. I thought, well, what's all this about?
No. Sorry,
I've not understood a thing then.
so my head's getting bounced around with all the questions, and I'm trying to but no. So the answer is you need the with events so that the controls, say mouse move events are available.
Very fair.
So we covered kind of the next section about events and removing events and hiding or suicide events. With events, Adrian wants to know what you are referring to when you say subclass.
Okay, so actually that's not a bad question because let's go back to just a little image that showed this will do. So what we have here is when the form opens, it's going to call that parent class. Okay. And then what we're going to have is a class. So a subclass is just a class. Okay. But how does it get called? So
what differentiates a subclass from any other class?
Okay. So the reason I'm calling this, if you can see my mouse here, the reason I'm calling this B controls a subclass is because it's actually being called by a parent. So the form will call the subclass interrogates the form, finds the controls, and it gives each control its own class. Okay.
How do you call a class, Greg? I'm getting confused. The terminology is you talk about calling classes, but
Okay,
you don't call
substantiating
classes.
the
You don't.
so
You
in the
instantiate
form,
them. You
instantiating them in their form. Yeah.
So
when
the parent class actually has a collection of the subclasses. So the parent class instantiates instances of the subclass and stores them in a collection. So when the parent class is terminated, it will actually empty out all of those subclassed instances from the parent class, but you're never calling that subclass directly. It's in the collection of the parent class.
and that's right. So it's just a class, really.
Yeah.
Correct. It is. The reason we call it a subclass is that it's being actually substantiated by a parent class. So the parent class is bound to the form. It's going to interrogate the form to find all the controls and then give them each and bind those to a class, which we're calling a subclass.
So each control, mouse move events is handled by the subclass in each collection for that control, correct?
Yeah. Yep. So each control has its own version of this B. Okay. So I might go back to the code on that. Let's go into go back to the parent, and we've got this. So when the parent is substantiated, it calls this function here called tooltip controls. It interrogates. So for each control in the calling form, controls, is it one of these types, image, label, command, button, and does it have the pseudo control tip text in the tag property? And if it does, it'll actually set a new, it'll actually assign a subclass that control, and then put it into a collection there. So it's kind of getting into a whole topic of classing and subclassing, and I'd suggest you go back and watch. Kent's actually got a presentation on that, and also on his website he's also got a little video about that as well. But
I'm not struggling to understand the concept of hierarchical objects.
Yeah.
I'm curious as to why it's described as a subclass, because it makes it sound different. Makes it sound as if it's different from some other thing. It's in a hierarchical structure. That's fine,
Yes.
but it's still just a class, just like the parent class is a class.
It is, yeah. And you've only got classes in your, you've only got normal you've got forms, standard modules, and classes. I'm calling it a subclass because it's actually branching out from the parent.
Because it's hierarchical. It's in a hierarchical
Yes.
structure.
Right. Yep. Yep.
So are there any other questions or comments or suggestions? Do you want to do a wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, and basically, I think I'm done in terms of the explanations. Let's just go back to here. Shift F5. So no, I think we've covered everything. I mean, that I can think of. I appreciate all the questions. And like I said, the special thanks to Kent and Eric from helping with this idea of classes or subclasses. I learned a lot from both Kent and Eric. But that's what I've come up with in terms of a custom tooltip.
I will follow up. Like I said, I'm not sure quite how it will work. I may have to redesign the form, but actually, after I turn off the recording, I'll probably show you the form and
yeah, let's do that.
Give you a demo. But are there any other final questions or comments from everybody else? Okay,
That's
great.
a sweet little solution.
I think it is very interesting and it looks like it will be useful. So next month, between now and next month, you have two choices. You can either volunteer for a presentation, or you can come hear me talking about something that I am interested in, which might not be Access at all.
Interesting. Sounds interesting no matter what it is. And thank you, Greg. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Sure,
well done, Greg.
thanks.
Yeah. All right, I'll turn off the recording and we can.
Yeah, thanks, George.
Thank you.
I actually have an application in production which could benefit from this. So I'm really intrigued as to the process of installing this code into, or like the retrofitting code that you've done.
Yeah.
So I'll give that a bit of a whirl and see how that goes. But
that reminds me, yes. Are you going to share the code with us?
Yeah, of course.
And how will you do that? What would be
I'll pass it to you, and then or whoever you want me to.
All right.
And
All right. Great. I almost overlooked that little detail. I'm getting excited and forgot to ask for the code. I would have been.
Yeah. No. Sure. It's in a demo application which has no innate functionality in and of itself. It's just for it's sort of like a template that I could use if I was to develop a new solution. I might start with that. So there's other stuff in there, and I'm not sure it all works, but you're welcome to it.
We have those. Okay, great. I'll look forward to that. And thank you again.